The ambitious march of Otomo Sugatsura swept aside thousands of troops of the Azai and Ishida, captured multiple key castles, and nearly cut the line of communication from the Key Peninsula to the rest of the eastern clans. The din of cannon fire echoed out in all directions, alerting the land that the Nanban weapons drew closer by the day. Meanwhile, Yoshishige, not wishing to be outdone, had marched out too, with more troops but lesser prospects. Like his younger brother, he established a new vassal family to rule the lands he took, and waited to see what would happen.
Lord, I have done as your worldly representative Pope Pius commanded. Let there be no doubt that I am willing to fight for you without second thought. I have conquered in your name, so that the people might feel your light, even if for the briefest time. With such work achieved, I now ask for a sign to direct me according to your actions once more. Is my trial of war over, O Lord? Is it time to dedicate myself to your flock, and leave the wolves to those more impure? While the feeling in my immortal soul says so, I dare not assume such a privilege is not the work of the devil. O Lord, guide me to keep the light I give to Japan shining.
My lord, an urgent message from the Edo. The Saika move to besiege them, and they call upon us to uphold their rights to these lands. The battle may have already started, Lord. I understand.
Lord, I ask again. Wait.
Where are your sandals? Oh, sorry, my lord. There was no time. I see. Inform the Edo we shall be there shortly. Yes, my lord.
A messenger whose dress is incomplete. So, Lord, you mean to say his truth was incomplete also? Thank you for the wisdom.
Welcome back to another episode of Barbarian Masters. I'm starting things off with some bad news. One of my main fleets around Kyushu appears to have glitched out. The battle initiation music is glitched on, by the way, as well, so ignore that. But here you can see this ship can't move. It also can't interact with other fleets. I can't put ships into it or out of it, or exchange it with other fleets. So overall, it's as if it's not there. And also, I think its zone of control doesn't apply either, because I saw enemy ships moving past it earlier, so we'll come back to that glitch situation later. The reason I needed to use that fleet right now and was trying to get a hold of it was because I knew the Satake were carrying an army my way. I happened to spot these guys during the end turn sequence, which is pretty lucky because I don't always actually watch the end turn sequence as it goes along. But this time I did see them sneaking around, so I found them in the fog of war and was able to put together some ships from other places to come and bring this fleet down. It's kind of annoying because now our defenses down to the south are weaker since I've brought more ships up here, especially the defenses around our main trading port. But anyway, at least this naval battle was nice and easy. The Satake for some reason came at us in small groups, so we just destroyed all of their Bokuboyas one by one. Although I say destroyed, actually two of them at the beginning of the battle did get away by routing. And that's going to be annoying because it means the fleet's still alive. Even though it's already retreated once this turn, you're still allowed to retreat again if you lose a battle. So we still have to go after them with something else, and that's going to stretch our resources even thinner. We're just lacking ships to cover all of our bases here and try to stop the enemy taking control of the area. I'm trying to use choke points and the like to stop fleets getting anywhere near us. So eventually I put something together to go and just auto-resolve those two damaged Kaboyas away, and that was the end of that. We'll go back to our defensive position now with far fewer ships available than before. The Goto tried once again to put their army into a fleet to come and attack us, and we're entering a repeating pattern now where I can drive their fleet away but I never see where it goes, and then I can't find it again, and it ends up sneaking back around at some point to re-attempt this naval invasion. So I'm just going to keep ships in that area to see if we can hopefully stop it forever and one day hunt their ships down. Bit of a surprise here when following a Date fleet led me right into the middle of an Azai fleet, and the only interesting thing about this battle is that the enemy came at me from two sides. That allowed me to form a line of ships where I can actually fire with both broadsides, which reload separately. So this doubles your firepower effectively, and that allowed us to end the battle pretty rapidly as all three of our Namban ships just demolished the incoming columns of enemy Bokaboya, and that was the end of that. Now back to the land strategy situation. We lost our new vassal, the Edo, as we saw earlier, to the Saika, but I'm not going to focus on trying to take that territory back. Instead, I thought we can probably here take North Kawachi if we play our cards right. At first I was considering attacking this army outside to draw everything out into a field battle, but I realised there's probably an easier way to do this. First, I'm going to move troops to attack North Kawachi as it is, because rather than drawing the enemy out, it might actually be easier to attack the army that's in there while it's still inside the castle, because it's so poorly composed for a siege defense. You can see it has almost no archers, just tons and tons of regular Ashigaru who would be pretty easy to kill with our own archers. So I've put together an army that's mostly archers, with some really good ones in there as well, to go and besiege the castle. Now though, I needed to drive the nearby army away, so that it could be just that one stack that we have to deal with. So I got some stuff together to attack the army outside. I had so much stuff that I thought they'll just retreat, and they did, but unfortunately they retreated in a direction that didn't suit us. They went and sat right next to the castle, so that doesn't help our plan really there. Still though, we had more troops to play with. We've got Kurokawa and his reserve army at Setsu to bring into the mix. I thought I'll just go and attack that land army right now and fight it separately, but I couldn't do it because of the zone of control of Osaka Castle. You can see Kurokawa wants to go all the way around to the northeast to enter an area that's right in front of him on the map. So what we'll need to do is a fake siege, basically exploiting the siege mechanics in Total War. Since an army under siege can't take part in battles, no matter what's actually besieging it, we'll have some Ashigaru just trap the enemy's stack inside. That removes their zone of control, allowing me to move out and attack the Saika army here. So even though there are actually 3 Saika stacks around here, the fact we've got sieges going means that only one of them can be involved in the fight, while 3-ish armies of ours will be involved. Thus it's very one-sided and we can just defeat the enemy. Plus the enemy's composition wasn't very good here. A couple of special units, but lots of trash as well. So we just wipe out that main force. That's a very good start. Now we are left with just a pretty easy castle assault to take North Kawachi. The unbelievers will look up to heaven and call upon their guardian spirits to save them. The spirits have already sided with us. God commands and they obey, as we obey the commands of the rightful shogun. From heaven then fall not blessings but blades. The 10,000 arrows of truth shatter those who would keep falsehood in their hearts. For those men, to die is all their ancestors could wish upon them, for 'tis the only way to show a mote of honour. Victory upon victory upon victory, this is my legacy, the legacy that the shogun chose to make real. We can be stopped no more than an arrow of righteous intent can be stopped. From the shogun's bow we fly, cross God's land, to strike deep into the heart of mankind's enemies. Draw again, I say, draw again. The work is not done, and we are not blunted, ne'er shall we be, till traitors of any ilk can no longer be remembered. We didn't quite wipe the enemy out without setting foot inside the castle, although we did come pretty close. In the end, an easy victory. They also did sally out, as you may have seen, although their sallies didn't come to much. I was surprised the AI actually bothered to do that, because it was the right tactic for the situation. So anyway, they lost more than 10 times what we did, and we got the castle. So our front line has now crept ever so slightly forwards. Very nice. This also supports Yodo Castle over to the east that Yoshishige took. Makes our front line a bit neater. Now with that done, I needed to lift the siege on Osaka Castle. I probably could have actually gone and attacked it this turn and had a decent chance of taking it, but I was willing to wait for a chance to get the enemy to come outside the castle and fight them separately so we don't have to deal with the large complication of going through that particularly formidable fortification. Now, as we progress towards the next turn, the Takeda exploit the fact that I'm now very spread out in terms of naval units by attacking the ships I have guarding our main trading port at Bungo. They've got some fire rocket Kaboyas in their fleet as well, which is pretty interesting. They may be very effective against our medium Bune. I could run away from this fight, but any chance to defend our main trading port does need to be taken because the loss of it will cripple us financially. I thought I was going to be clever and try to hide behind this rock to perhaps get the enemy to shoot at us with their fire rockets and then the rock would block them, but it just didn't work like that. Unfortunately, the AI simply came around the rock very cleverly, and because all of their units outrange ours, we just need to charge at them. Two of our Bune are Dondobus ships, so we need to get very close to attack them, whereas their fire rockets can hit us from very far away, so that's going to be an ongoing problem. Once we do get close, however, these Bokaboyas stand no chance whatsoever. We can just level their crews in a couple of shots, and in most cases they surrender once they come under fire. Here, though, a bit of a dangerous situation. I'm sailing out into open waters. There's a whole load of ships in front of me, and all they need to do is sail away, and that will effectively render my attack invalid because I can't really catch them. We just have to hope that the AI sail some of their ships close enough to us for us to shoot them, but like with this scenario here, the timing isn't always right. Our men aren't in the right position or don't have their weapons loaded and can't exploit that. The enemy also have fire arrows, which combined with the fire rockets means our ships are going to be under a quite heavy threat of being set alight. We were fortunate though in that the fire rockets seem to be much weaker than I expected. They don't really damage the hull of ships as you might think, so that's nice. We're able to keep sailing, but still they do have a chance to set us on fire, and of course they kill crew on top of the ship as they land. Now our leading ship was completely surrounded, bombarded with rockets and fire arrows as we saw, and as it got set on fire the crew surrendered and just jumped for it, so that's a pretty hefty blow. The other two ships are having more luck because the enemy weren't keeping their distance so much, so we're able to force a couple of enemy ships to surrender. We're still sitting ducks though, so once the rest of the enemy ships turn their attention onto us, that may not go all that well. I did have that bow Kaboya, as we just saw there, off in the distance. I was trying to use it to distract enemy ships, but it just surrendered once it got close to the enemy since it had almost no crew on it. Now my medium Bune managed to board an enemy bow Kaboya. That's pretty good because we'll just annihilate their crew instantly, but since they're stationary while they're doing that, they start taking a bombardment. Not nice. This enemy Kaboya got stuck on the rock I was hiding behind earlier, so my Dunderbuses come in and just wipe out the crew and they surrender, so that's good news. But now they take some fire arrows from a ship over by the red line, and that unfortunately sets the boat on fire. Not very nice. That's going to demoralize the crew and mean we don't have much time left on that ship. Now, I noticed most of the enemy fleet actually also ended up going to get stuck on the rock, so I tried to just charge it with my medium Bune, but they all started firing at me at once and it was just devastating for this ship. It gets blown to pieces by the fire rockets and easily set on fire. The crew abandons ship before we get close enough to that blob of enemy Kaboyas. I needed to do the same thing with the Donderbuses to have any chance of actually damaging the rest of their fleet, but they also surrendered due to the fire on their ship, and that brought the battle to a close. So that didn't go very well. Although we did get perhaps nearly half of the enemy fleet to surrender, the fact that they won means they just get all those ships back. So ultimately we didn't disable any ships and we lost all three of ours, and we can't really afford to be replacing those ships at this point. More importantly, our trade port is now open, but in an act of mercy the Takeda fleets actually don't blockade it, so now we just have to hope every other clan doesn't. And there we see the Chosokabe are coming in for a naval invasion. We'll have to hunt that down and decide whether to prioritize stopping the naval invasion or securing our trade ports. But that's going to be an issue for the future. Right now the Saika are attacking Yoshishige. We've got a big numerical advantage and a small advantage on the balance bar, so I was willing to take this. They do have some interesting units, some unique warrior monk units, and some very high ranked samurai cavalry and foot samurai who are going to be very dangerous, but as long as we're careful here, I think this will be a suitable battle for us.
Why are there Takeda banners in my bay? The fleet hasn't been sighted for weeks, my lord. I fear something has happened to it. What happened to it?
A storm, perhaps.
I will not have decades of work and planning picked apart by an imaginary storm. Send out riders everywhere, find them, and have them break this siege.
Of course, Lord. They shall depart before sundown, Lord.
I still need the Nan ban. All of you here are personally responsible for making sure our ports remain open. Fail, and you will all die. If not at the hands of the rebels, then at those of the Shogun.
The battle started with enemy cavalry coming onto our flanks, but they were easily shot at by my men, and I had enough troops to fold spearmen to form echelon, so they couldn't do too much damage. On my left they had so many cav that it seemed like they were going to get to our rear flank, but I'd put my own light cavalry in reserve, so they can now appear from these trees to engage the enemy and lock them down, so I can then chase them with other units like spears to make sure we win this fight, since light cav aren't actually all that good in melee. Over here it's a bit of a difficult fight as we take on the enemy's mounted warrior monks, but soon some Ashigaru will join that fight to make sure we win. On the far right, some of my Yari cavalry got to engage some enemy katana cavalry. That'll be a definite win for us. And here, as the enemy's cavalry start getting depleted and disengaging, our ranged units will now be able to finish them off pretty easily. So most of the cav is gone before the enemy's infantry can support. That's perfect. Now we can form up for the second phase of the battle. Over here it's already starting, as my Ashigaru reinforcements, mostly just loads of Yari Ashigaru and Naginata Ashigaru, form up in a big line to start folding around the enemy's flank. There's our Ashigaru supporting against the enemy's mounted monks. Some more special units over here as enemy ninjas come in to try and exploit a little hole in our line, but they're actually going to struggle fighting with our Yari walls because they're not all that good as melee combatants. And here, as the enemy outflank one of my Yari walls, my archers just absolutely decimate the enemy, and that ends up being a pretty favourable scenario. Most of the enemy's good infantry was attacking my reinforcement Ashigaru. That meant the battle up here on the hill with our main force was pretty easy to win. I just advanced my samurai into enemy Ashigaru and will just cut through them. Their commander's up here as well. He's going to have to fight with our Yari cavalry, and he will fail in doing so. And at the back there you can see we're kiting a few enemy units around with other cavalry, just keeping them out of the fight for now. And a lot of the enemy's infantry at this point has already been defeated. Although they had high quality infantry, they were just swarmed with arrows and completely surrounded by Yari Ashigaru and then just stabbed to death. We were well able to deal with them. Now it's just a case of moving forwards to take out enemy archers, and our cavalry from the back of the map now come in to help out with that job. Nice and easy. The units that we were kiting decided to rout rather than take part in the rest of the slaughter, and that was the end of that. A pretty quick battle actually. I think the enemy had much less of a chance here than they presumably thought they did. Really minimal losses for us, and the enemy losing tons of decent units, including that really high level commander. He was even higher rank than Yoshishige here, so nice to take him out of the picture before he gets a more substantial army underneath him where he might be able to do more damage with his buffs. Now right after that we're going into another battle because the Saika army at Osaka actually attacked out to hit my guys on the bridge just next to it, so this is what I wanted. It was good that I didn't go and besiege them then. Now we are going to get the field battle we were looking for, and interestingly Kurokawa's army is going to be coming in as reinforcements on the enemy's side of the bridge, so we can use that to our advantage. As things get started I need to cover the two crossing points on the river and watch to see where the enemy army goes to try and determine which one they're going to mostly cross over. As things started they were kind of moving towards both, so we just had to maintain our position and wait for Kurokawa to form up behind them to see what effect that would have. We want to charge forwards as quickly as possible with his army to try and stop the enemy from sending everything across the river. Since we don't have very much there to defend, we need to lighten the load on that Ashigaru force. Here, one unit for some reason decided to come on its own to try and stop Kurokawa's army. I sent forward some katana samurai to almost experiment with a duel to see how one unit of katanas would take down one unit of drafted Ashigaru. We're going to have a big advantage, although we actually took far more losses than I expected here. We lost perhaps half of our samurai fighting with these guys. Maybe it's just the difficulty level because it was such a one-sided fight. I was just surprised that it didn't go much better. Now at the same time, the enemy's advanced units are starting to cross the river, where they'll find I've just put a Yari wall to wait to receive them. They'll do fine in that melee, but the enemy's archers are more of a threat. If the enemy troops get out of the way, they could easily shoot my Yari wall and destroy it. Fortunately, they are just going to plow in with everything, so they're going to have blocked lines of sight and probably inflict friendly fire, making that a little bit less risky for us. The fights aren't all that good for us, like here Naginata Ashigaru fighting the enemy swords won't necessarily win, so we do need to support as quickly as possible, but the enemy were just sending units here and there to block Kurokawa's army. Luckily, since they were obviously committing to the eastern crossing point, I could move all of my army on the other side of the river to defend that point and buy us more time. Here we got a nice favourable engagement where some enemy sword Ashigaru just jogged into the front of my long Yari Ashigaru. We will easily win that fight there. More delaying units were on the way, and I was being very conservative about facing these guys. I could have just charged them with a couple of units and then ran the rest of my army up to the crossing point, but I was actually having the army in formation so that I could decimate these guys with arrow attacks and then charge and surround them properly as if this was just a miniature battle to make sure we minimise the losses among Kurokawa's force. And I think I'm okay to do that because the enemy are struggling to break through at the river crossing now that I've got everything here defending this one choke point. The enemy probably are actually outnumbered by us because only a few of their units are making this attack. So many are trying to delay our other units or just being kited about the place. So we probably could now hold that river crossing without any support, but we're going to give that support anyway here. And very nice spear charge as we ram these enemy cavalry. That's going to destroy that unit very quickly indeed, and we'll be able to move on. A similar thing over here where our Naginata samurai managed to catch some of the enemy's trailing archers. They'll just be destroyed, and now we'll have an open path to the river crossing where we can start making our rear attacks. We also cleared up the units that came to try and stop us. A couple of them, like their pirate units, had banzai, so it took a while to take them down because it stops them from routing, but eventually that was all over. Seeing all this activity, the enemy actually let up on their pressure for the river crossing. They started moving units backwards. I was doing the same thing. Because our units at the front were so heavily damaged, I replaced them with my reserve units and even just charged forwards into the river crossing now because it's time to crush the enemy between our two armies. Most of their melee troops came to attack Kurokawa's force, and due to some bad micro, they actually did manage to charge right into some of my bandits here. They weren't on skirmish mode, but soon enough they're going to face our entire army there and just be destroyed. In the background, some of my drafted troops were kiting enemies about elsewhere, but that fight didn't come to anything. They all just routed, as all of the units in this area were destroyed. So a nice decisive victory. The garrison of Osaka Castle is now dead, and that of course means we're going to have the opportunity to take it. This is an official notice to the people of Ishiyama Honganji from the ruling shogun Otomo Yoshiaki. You are welcomed back to the peaceful realm of Japan, and encouraged to express your gratitude to the shogunate with gifts according to your means. In accordance with legal regulations, it is required that you perform the following actions before sundown. All icons of Buddha in any form are to be brought to the castle courtyard and handed over to the quartermaster. Shrines of any size, caliber or description are to be set aflame and allowed to burn in their entirety. Should the flames be extinguished by natural means, they are to be renewed as soon as is possible. All residents must work to ensure these flames do not spread to nearby structures, but are likewise not at all hindered from spreading within the relevant space. All persons in religious professions must report to the castle commander for mandatory interviews. All work shall be overseen by officers appointed by the shogunate. Should the work not be sufficient in speed or quality, or should any person be found hindering or inadequately contributing to said work, the local population will be punished via arbitrary deportation until the problem is deemed solved. So now we have Osaka captured, a very nice defensive position, and we also get the chance to promote a new general because the army that made this win has taken part in so many fights recently. I'm going to do it even though I'm going to lose all my money doing it because having a general could be essential in the future. We'll repair the place up and leave it under the current stewardship of this new guy, Daihoji Kamatari. He has no traits whatsoever, but hopefully he will prove to be invaluable in the future. It's reached the point where Sugatsura can now go on the offensive again because his army's been replenished after its previous battles, and interestingly the vassal that he set up, the Ishida, has managed to survive. The enemy didn't declare war on them, so that's nice, got a bit of a buffer there for the moment. Now I want to move south and attack the Azai. This will completely cut off the east of Japan from our current front line and allow Sugatsura to sweep in from the west and perhaps help unify the area. This could be risky because we don't know anything about what's to our east right now. We could just get counterattacked by loads of armies, but we're going to take that risk. The Azai army is a bit stronger than us and looks pretty decent overall, so I'm going to try and get them to sally here to get an easier field battle and just see what comes of that. I am putting myself at risk of an unknown army appearing to join the Azai in a sally, but at least I can somewhat negate that by moving my reinforcements here to a very nice position, one that's hidden and is in range of both the Ishida and Sugatsura's army, so they may be able to do some good work. Nearby, the fleet carrying our army from Kyushu has now finally arrived, so we've got a whole bunch of random troops to add to the mix, plus Kobyakawa and Terada. Now their mission originally was to come and defend Wakasa, but it seems that's going to be invalidated by the current situation that they're discovering, so they need to try and find the forces they're meant to be taking command of. I'm going to split them up to achieve this. Terada's going to head east with a few troops, and he of course is meant to be replacing Sugatsura if he can catch up with him, and Kobyakawa needs to go back towards Kyoto to take command once again of the situation there that's currently been assumed by Yoshishige. Not sure who's actually supposed to be in charge at this point. Jumping over to the west again now, we need to look at this naval situation. We need to try and win back our defensive perimeter around our trade port, and we also need to stop that Chosokabe navy from landing a force somewhere, and we're lacking ships to do it with at the moment. It's questionable whether we can actually put a reasonable challenge against both threats. The main thing I would use to stop this, of course, would be my fleet, the main fleet I had defending Kyushu, but this is all that's left of it, these 3 ships. I thought I filmed it, but apparently I didn't. I actually had to disband most of it to unglitch it, and after I disbanded a few of the ships, the rest of the ships came back to life. Unfortunately, I lost my Nanban ship in the process, so now I'm going to have to spend precious money to try and get more ships together because we really need them at this point. And we'll just have to see what we can do with the ships we already have in the current turn in the next part. The balance of power around the capital was shifting more and more in the Otomo's favour with each victory and each incremental advance. But on the water, their power was diminishing despite constant victories, for there were no castles to take or strategic points to hold. They were fighting a swarm and had no solid remedy for their numerical inferiority. With only enough money available to pay for their troops for a few weeks, maintaining the flow of gold from Europe and the flow of goods back became more important than any of the battles raging around Kyoto. That is all for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and very special thanks to all of the Officially Devin patrons for making this happen. So we'll just have to take our mixed prospects and see what we can fashion them into in the next episode of Barbarian Masters.